Here we go. That's right. It's time for Saturday night Philadelphia Flyers hockey as the road trip continues. They opened it in Arizona with a 4-1 win. Tonight, the task is, I would say, considerably harder, facing the Colorado Avalanche, who sit in the top spot in the Central Division of the Western Conference. It's Jason Martinez, Chris Terrian, and Brian Smith on location. We got boots on the ground on this Saturday night. But where we start, Bundy, is something that I know John Tortorella wouldn't be thrilled about it being asked about, but I'm going to ask you because you played. You're one of those guys that had to catch your air
question
when you went to Colorado to play. And we hear a lot about the thin air a mile high. How much of a bother was it? And was it as simple as getting there a little earlier and getting acclimated?
Yeah, you know what's funny, actually, Jace, too, with just thinking that, I actually had great numbers in Colorado. I wasn't a point guy, but I had a lot of good productivity in Colorado, and even in Dallas, I had 2 road goals in a playoff series when you're in Colorado, and you're not going to win a playoff series when that happens, I can assure you of that. But you know what? There's a lot of adages on it, and I always think the best way to handle it is to not think about it, just to kind of like put it out of your mind. But that being said, yes, I've been there as many, many times, probably 50, 60 times in my career as a player, whatever else. And there's no doubt the day, if you get in, I think they said the day before you get there, you can be rough the next night. But if you're there for 2 or 3 more days, you can get acclimated to, let's say you're playing a playoff series, right? You got 2 games there. The first one can be rough if you go in there, and then you get acclimated. Like where Smitty is tonight, we can actually, as we see here, we're doing radio, but we can see the overview. Smitty can get a nosebleed actually tonight where he's at.
I'm still in Phoenix. I mean, this is nuts.
Yeah. So that's the difference a little bit. And it really, Jason, to be honest with you, the first period, it was always, no matter what, guys were told, keep your shift short early.
Yeah.
Don't get hung out there because, yes, that is the one thing. If you get laid out there and you end up with a minute 30 or 2-minute shift because you're chasing the puck, you could have a really, really rough night. And that's sure. But don't let it think about it too much. But yes, the air is thin. You are a mile high.
Yeah, Jason not only stole my first question, but then you answered my second. So I guess we'll figure out something else to talk about here. But yeah, that's the thing. It's not necessarily something you want to think about all the time. But yeah, those 2 minutes, you get stuck out there on an icing or something. Those 2-minute shifts, I can imagine they got to eat you up. But I guess I'll take a step to another thing the Flyers are doing tonight, which is a 10-7 lineup. The absence
11.
of Ryan Poehling again, 11-7, excuse me. Ryan Poehling still not available due to his illness, and so rather than roll Ole Lixell out here against a team like Colorado, they're going to go 7D and put Mark Stahl in the lineup. And I guess at least from the defense perspective, that can probably help matters a little bit when you have an extra set of legs to throw out there every now and then when you need it.
Maybe. I mean, if they told me that they're playing 7D tonight, I wouldn't be happy about it. I don't like that extra guy because it throws you off what you're used to. But that being said, Smitty, I don't have a problem putting a veteran like Stahl in the game. Just depends where you are in the lineup. If they're going to rotate 3 guys in the back end. If I'm a top pair guy, no, I don't want 7 defensemen. If they're doing a traditional flip of 7 guys where they have a rotation, but I don't suspect that'll be the case.
So what do you think it is, Bundy? You go top 2 pair as per, and then you rotate the third.
Yeah,
the 3 of them in that third pairing.
Yeah, and if somebody's having a rough night, maybe in the top 2 pairs, and they just need a shift off or something, you have the flexibility. But that would, Jason, that would be the way to do it. That would be the way to do it. You don't want to break up your top pair really ever. Second pair, not usually either, just because of if there's any penalty killing situation. So the best way to do it is to assemble it like it's 3 pairs and just use the last pair as a 3-man rotation.
Yeah, you just don't want to upset those top 2 pairs because, Bundy, we've talked about it.
Yeah.
I said you had one of the hardest jobs in pro sports, being a top pairing defenseman, having to go against opposition top lines night in and night out.
Yeah.
Maybe there wasn't that marquee line in Arizona, but that's not the case here in Colorado. No. You got to deal with Nathan you got to deal with a D that joins the rush of McCarr. I mean, you got a lot on your table. How do you deal with a guy like McKinnon? Because he is so explosive and powerful, and Rantanen the same thing.
So and this is maybe a big statement, but if you ask me the way I watched the game today, would I rather play against Nathan McKinnon or Connor McDavid? And my answer every single time will be Connor McDavid. And people are like, really? No, I'm telling you, McKinnon pushes the pace so much. McDavid is a speedster. He's a ice-long speedster, right? So you can gap that to some degree and hope that he doesn't make you look foolish. But what McKinnon does is he pushes the puck in traffic with pace. And so what that does is it causes confusion. And watch him in the neutral zone. When he gets that blue line, man, you defensemen, I'm telling you, it's not just a matter of going back. You got to shift. You got to move left to right. You got to stay in your lane because he will stop on a dime and find an open guy and then speed up from 0 to 60 again in a matter of seconds to go back to the front of the net. This guy is so dynamic when he's on, when he wants to play his game. He's, to me, the most treacherous forward in the league when he's going.
One of the comparisons that was made this morning, Bundy, in the pregame media available with John Tortorella was whether he thought this Colorado team was, in terms of speed, was going to be a lot like playing the Rangers back on Black Friday, and he kind of thought that was a decent way to approach it, that they're going to have to make sure that they stay above the puck, that they don't put themselves in a spot where all of a sudden things are going to turn around and go the other way, because, again, not only do you have to deal with the speed of a team like this, but again, if you're out there, if you're stuck long, it's harder to catch up given the circumstances here.
Yeah, and they're acclimated to it, right? Like, I mean,
right.
They know that. So that's the difference in the start of this game. And Colorado's got a lot to prove. They had a disappointing last year after winning the Cup. And there's continued expectations there. I mean, they arguably the best defenseman in the league, if not a top 3. And the same with the forward in McKinnon. Their support pieces are unbelievable. They have great forwards right through their lineup. They have good depth on defense. This is a very, very viable team, again, that I think can get out of the West. If the situation's right in April and May, this is a very, very dangerous team that certainly can win the Stanley Cup again. They're built again to win.
And as a goaltender, Carter Hart's got to be ready. Nathan McKinnon, third in the NHL in shots on goal at 121. Usually, the wingers are the guys with maybe the most shots on goal, right? He's third in the NHL with 121. The only other center really in the top 5 is Jack Eichel, who's got 120. So he'll throw a lot of rubber at the net. There's no doubt about that. But what challenge, real quick, does it pose that McKinnon can not only beat you up with the speed, but he can beat you up with a little bit of the power too? He
does. That's what I meant, Jason, too, is he pushes the pace forward. He's so physical with the puck.
He is.
And that it is. It's almost like he's
bowling ball
taunting you to try to come get it, but he is so strong on the puck, and he's a game changer on the power play too. And one thing he does, he stops on a dime and finds an open man. And the other problem the Flyers will have tonight is probably 25 plus minutes of a defenseman getting up the ice almost every single play. In Makar. A couple of games in the past, I haven't liked his games against the Flyers, and sometimes a guy can have bad games against a team repeatedly. We'll see what happens tonight, but I have a memory like that, just thinking back on some of his stuff here in Philly. He had an awful game in Philadelphia a few years back, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. He didn't think he had a great game, I think, last year, but he's just a guy that gets up the ice. He's so dangerous, and he has such high amount of skill. This is obviously a team, too. You don't want to give the man advantage too much in a game like this.
It's odd because their power play, they've got some guys, like we mentioned, like McKinnon and even Makar have great numbers on the power play. But their power play, let me just bring it up here as to where they're ranked in the NHL. It's
not great, but still scary.
Yeah, because right. You never know. Like, there's just
right.
a game-breaking talent there. Flyers PK has been good. Their PK has actually been really good as well. They're 18th on the power play. They're at 18.8%. That's an underachieving power play, you would think, for them, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. But again, it's, when I look at a power play, if I'm a defenseman, I don't look at I'll never look at a percentage. Somebody's going to tell me that. I look at the personnel and the setup. That's all I'm getting video of beforehand, because I don't care if a guy's at 18%. They could go at 35% for the next 10 games. Like we've seen that happen, right? With great skill teams like the Devils. So that would lift that power play percentage up to like 23 or 24%. So I'm looking at just the personnel, and I'm not too concerned about that 18 point whatever it is, because that probably isn't really significant of the amount of skill that you're going to see on this power play.
Yeah.
And the other thing,
stay off the PK.
Yeah, just don't do it, right? Nothing dumb.
The other thing, too, that I don't like about playing here is I fear that the Flyers penalty kill might not be as dangerous offensively just because you're burning a lot of energy killing the penalty. And then all of a sudden you got to do a wind sprint up the ice. I mean, how effective are you going to be at that here? So I don't know. It's just speculation.
Especially in the second period.
Yeah, I wonder about that.
Yes, that's a brutal second period change. And it's funny you say that, Jace. I actually remember it. It's for the left defenseman. It felt like it was almost twice as long to get off the ice from that front on the second period change there. It is just a nightmare. And if you can't get off, boy, you may be mile high for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and sometimes you got to stay out there because the other guys are changing. You can't abandon like everybody.
You just become a pylon at that point.
Oh, yeah.
A pylon with a stick.
Yeah. We've seen a few of those.
Yeah.
Let's take a time out here on the pregame show as the Flyers get set to take on the Colorado Avalanche. Game 2 of a 3-game road trip, which will conclude Tuesday in Nashville. Let's take the time out. We're back after this on the BetRivers.com Flyers Broadcast Network. Back live as the Philadelphia Flyers get set to take on the Colorado Avalanche. Saturday night hockey in the Mile High City. It's Jason Martinez, Chris Therien, Brian Smith. I know, Smitty, you're on site. I will just come full disclosure right now. I may be doing this broadcast in my pajama bottoms here on a Saturday night.
You know what? Someone else might be too.
I mean, again, we're far enough away here that nobody would notice. I don't think
Well, we're definitely far enough away that no one would notice, Smitty, so It's all good.
Looks like Bundy had the old screwdriver and hammer out again, did a little work on the
You are the most efficient remodeler I've ever seen.
Wiring, electric, everything.
This is, I always say, this is from Slinger's Bar in the Reading area. And I'll tell you what, I did some stuff the other day on Twitter because I want to change my background regularly. And the Flyers fans sent me some just amazing exhibit rooms, as you call them, or man cave. It's still legal to say that. But this is absolutely
person cave, Bundy. Come on,
yeah, a person cave. That's just amazing, and I've had some great pictures. So I'm going to use them in honor of all these people that put the time in to put it. I mean, this is just. I mean, this is like insane. I have 4 pictures. It's the greatest thing I've ever seen. The picture is amazing.
So I guess if you're listening to this on the radio and you don't know what we're talking about, hop on over to Twitter and find Bundy's or Jason's Twitter account or the Flyers Broadcast Network. You can see it on all 3 of them. They are very impressive.
Oh, yeah. Magnificent. Yeah. So I just asked them for background instead of just having some wall behind me for people to share their pictures. And I got probably 50 pictures of people's man caves. And I just said, I'm going to use these randomly as my background pic. So if you're seeing it, great. If you're hearing it, and you want to add some pictures to my Twitter account, I'll gladly use them when available.
Oh, Bundy, there was a time in your playing days you'd been swinging from those sticks on the ceiling.
Yeah,
those days are over, but yeah.
Yeah, I killed that guy moons ago.
Much to everyone's delight, and yours included, which is great work by you. Let me ask you something else about Makar, Bundy, because he comes into the league and he grabs it by storm, and he wasn't taken, in pick 1, 2, or 3 of that draft in 2017, and A guy that
Thanks for the reminder. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of teams kicking themselves, Look, I saw a thing on Twitter the other day. It said the best player of this generation, every team had a chance to draft. It's Nikita Kucherov.
Yeah.
But a guy like Makar being this hybrid defenseman in today's game, it's kind of the perfect guy coming at the perfect time where the game is for how he plays it. But how is he as a defender? Let's take the offensive element out. How is he at defending? Period. End of sentence.
So when I said I remember he had a rough game in Philly a few years ago, it might have been 3 years ago. I remember that maybe a little longer. He had an awful game defensively in Philly. I think it was -3 if you go back to it. But nonetheless, he was not really committed. A guy that's that special offensively has to be probably, in my estimation, 80% dynamic defensively as well. Now, someone like me, I had to give 110% in the D zone because I didn't have that makeup to play that kind of offense. He's a good skater, but he's got instincts that are just phenomenal offensively. Not a lot of people have them. Most wish they did. They just don't. And that's up being honest. So he can pour it in because what he's going to do is he's going to say, if I can get a jump out of this zone with the offense, I have to take that risk. And I can assure you his coaches told him to take that risk also. So that's why he said he's a better defender, but he's never going to be viewed as a top defensive defender in his own zone per se with the great stick and the body position, because he just has to move up so much offensively and add on to that layer coming at the other teams in an outman situation.
See, the thing is, look, I watch him sometimes and I see what he does offensively, and I'm stunned that through his years of playing, nobody turned him into a forward. Maybe that's because that's where the game is today.
Yeah, you know what?
Finish.
There's no doubt about it. He's up the ice so much, and he loves that offensive flair. I mean, in a lot of ways, I don't want to ever throw the comparison, but he has a lot of the Bobby Orr type of skating, right? Now, that was a different game then. Like, Orr would get up the ice. He would go behind the other team's net. Scotty Niedermayer did that too. Like, people forget how unbelievable that guy was. And people are like, oh, the Devils were boring. Meanwhile, there's Niedermayer in the corner of the offensive zone making a play and costing your team the game somehow. But that's what Makar does, and there's no way where I watch a game from that you could ever make that guy a winger, because you couldn't take that winger that you replaced him, put him back on defense to be the same player. Yeah. That's just having it or not having it. That's just being a superstar or being a regular player. And you know what I love? Like I said on a podcast a couple weeks ago, Tom Brady was talking about mediocrity in a lot of sports. He sees it in the NFL. That's what you want. That's what these games need, or these players that are so far better than maybe where they're at it and other things. And that's what keeps these leagues going, with a person that's not mediocre, that has excellence and can get up and make a difference. And he's fun for the league to watch. I'm looking forward to seeing him tonight.
Yeah.
I guess I'll draw it over the Flyers side, Bundy, in terms of young defensemen. Certainly it'd be a tall order to ask Cam York to turn into a Cale Makar, but certainly it looked like the other night that he had reached another level of confidence with that goal that he scored. And he talked to Jason, Torch talked to Jason about it during the podcast last week, that he's been more outspoken in the room and even at the bench during certain situations. And just wondering what you've seen in his game in terms of a change this year, over the course of the season so far.
He's improved, I mean, there's games early I didn't think he did much of anything. I think the last 5, no, I don't mean it like that. Like, I'm not saying, I just thought he was there some nights, present. Mm-hmm. And when I felt that there was a lot more of the apple that he could take a bite of. And the last 4 or 5 games, he's taken a huge bite of the apple. And whatever Torts and staff has done, or his own personal confidence, has been great. I mean, that's what you want to see. You want to see a young guy taking a step forward in a developmental fashion, with his confidence, with his puck skills. So I really like what he's done. The key is to continue to do that kind of stuff. Now, the other thing too with York, which it's really interesting to look at, because when you look at Sanheim now, he's up the ice a ton. He's trying to do a little bit what Makar does in terms of how he gets up. He's just not that Weaver yet. He doesn't get up like Makar does. It's that instinct that makes that one little thing different between one player and another. But what I'm saying is York has to stay back sometimes because Sanheim's up the ice so much. So in terms of that, he has to cut the ice in half. And when I say that, it means slide over to the middle so you're not leaving a big gap. for the other team to break out in case that defenseman gets caught. But there's a lot of defensive responsibility that he's had to learn on the fly because his partner's been told by people to get up the ice, try to make a difference like a Cale Makar does in Colorado. And so there's been a lot on this young guy. I think he's learned a lot. And I definitely want to continue to see how he develops. I don't like defensemen who are just there and standing still. You got to do something because there has to be something with this many players in 2 leagues in North America to separate yourself from a lot of guys that may be very close to you or similar. And I think he's done a really good job lately of that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right at the beginning, buddy. You've noticed them, and sometimes if you go through a game, you go, I don't really notice him tonight. And certain players, for what they're being asked to do, that's not a good thing. With him, I think we saw this last year with Owen Tippett too. Is the way confidence has manifested itself with some of these young players is the decisions they make on the ice and the creativity they play with. Like, Tippett last year, you started to see him spinning off guys and making plays that you couldn't have fathomed he was even try prior. And then the goal the other night for Cam York, to kind of go down the right side, cut it to the middle, then toe drag and go bar down. That, to me, that was okay. He's got confidence because he decided to try that and it worked.
It does, but also he has to be reminded, and he has to know as he develops in this league what he's going to be good at. And that's such a key for a young guy. And I look back at my career too when I started, and it didn't take me long. I was a guy that got a lot of points in college. Like I had more than a point a game as a sophomore in college in Division I as a true 19-year-old. And when I got to the NHL, I realized very quickly that I was not going to be a point-getting player or a power play type of guy. And I realized that, so I said, what can I do to stay here and be good here? Keep skating, use my good legs I had, but be really good defensively. And that took me about 3 years into my 96, 97 season before I really felt comfortable. So it takes time. It takes time, especially when you have to transition a little bit from what you were really good at in the amateurs and what you still think you can be good at when you get to the professional level. I think it's taking steps, taking chances sometimes. I think a young player that has an ability to do that has to do it, has to learn to lose and get kicked down a little bit through those experiences, because I really feel that's what makes a player better in the end. The more you fall and you learn to get back up, those lessons become more complete over time. And I think that's a good step that he's taken.
Scott Lawton's the guy that had to figure that out.
Yeah, and I guess real quick, Bundy, I'll ask you, just while we're on the subject, one of the things that Torts has talked about this year is that, they've been able to move him back to the left side because, they didn't have a spot for him really on the left last season. He was playing a lot of right side. I mean, I guess the commoners among us probably don't realize what a big difference it is playing on the left versus on the right when you're a defenseman.
If you can get 2 defensemen on the left and a left defenseman, true left defenseman, and a right defenseman, well, that's money. Because what it does is it makes it easier to pass to one another instead of another guy having to receive it on his backhand. And that's really what it is. If a player didn't have to catch a pass on his backhand as often as he does, it would be a lot easier position to play. I commend anybody that has to play either switch sides from their stick to that same position on the other side. It's tough, but when he's in that position now, that's what they've realized, that it'll make it easier on him to be able to play in a situation where he's not in his offside pairing.
Yeah, Torts last year he said that offensively that gave him an advantage. Yeah. I said, well, why don't you play center D? And the offense, you play on the right, and then you play left in the D's.
and Torts had said something about it too today, where he was saying, well, again, I might be getting this backwards, but something about like if you have a righty on the left side, you don't notice it as much. But if you put a lefty on the right side, for some reason, it just sticks out glaringly. I don't know if I have the hands right, but one is much more noticeable to him anyway, under the other.
Yeah, I get it. Stands to reason. Let's take our last timeout, and we'll get you set for Flyers, Colorado Avalanche. We'll give you the line combinations, including the fact that Mark Stahl is actually listed as a winger because they're running 11-7.
I can't wait.
Guarantee he's never played a game at wing in the NHL. Although you never know. He's been around a long time. We'll take a break. We're back after this. Flyers, Avalanche at the top of the hour. You're listening to Flyers Game Day on the BetRivers.com Flyers Broadcast Network. We are back live as it is Flyers game day. It is Chris Terrian, Brian Smith, Jason Martinez, Flyers Avalanche puck drop tonight. 7:12. We're going to keep it an extra couple of minutes in the
It is Military Appreciation Night here tonight.
Oh, okay.
We've got a military and freedom service dogs ceremonial face-off, and I really hope that there's a dog dropping the puck here because that's the best.
The dog will drop something. It may not be a puck there.
We found that out the hard way, didn't we?
Yes, we did. I think that meme's still going around from time to time.
Well, hopefully we're nudging it out of existence, but
Hal just figured it. Yeah. Let's how about the line combination? Sean Couturier, Travis Konechny, Tyson Forster, Scott Lawton centering Joel Farabee and Cam Atkinson, Morgan Frost, Owen Tippett, and Bobby Brink. Then Garnet Hathaway, Nick Deslauriers, and Mark Stahl kind of listed as a winger. Kind of, sort of.
I'll tell you this. They were doing drills for the goalies the other day in Arizona. These poke check drills where the guys would come down into the corner and then cut back out in front, and the goalies were trying to poke the puck. And Stalzy comes and does this, and he makes this really nice move, and he roofs this thing. And there were about 25, 30 kids from a youth hockey team watching, and they went nuts. And I'm laughing because he's got 51 goals and 1,100 career games. So who knows? Maybe he'll chip one in.
Wow. Who plays more minutes tonight, Bundy? Igor Zamula or Mark Stahl with Rasmus Ristolainen? That's a tough one, right? Okay. Dealing with that speed and gapping it. Look, Stahl's 36.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that Zamula is trending upwards in the eyes of Torts, just in the way he's playing his overall game since coming back from that brief spell he spent watching it from up here. He had a really nifty play in the Arizona game. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but it was the Farabee goal started off. I think Jason, you mentioned it. It was a block by Zamula in the defensive zone, but he didn't just block it. He also at the same time he kicked it, I believe, to Sean Walker. Mm-hmm. He could have just blocked it and sent it to the corner, but he saw the opportunity to actually kick it to a teammate, and that's what started that rush the other way. So he's starting to at least see the game slow down enough that he can see an opportunity to do things like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, it's just taking chances a little bit and, making plays, just having enough confidence to try to make plays. So, again, I saw today that he wanted to keep Manny. Torts liked his game. But again, he's going to have – this is, again, an opportunity, I think, for him to look at a couple of those defensemen in big spots. And I think just kind of looking at the other night where Ollie Luxell came in the game, he didn't do enough really to stay in. So in a game like this tonight with the defensemen, 6 guys, there's nothing wrong with putting another guy in the lineup tonight, especially having the luxury of playing a guy who's as veteran as Mark Stahl. Hey, if someone else isn't going good or you're in a tight game, that gives the team a lot of flexibility to put an experienced player in later in the game if something wasn't going well with the 6. But I look at Stahl as 1 of 7 tonight, not like he's the 7th.
Yeah. But Bundy, did you ever hit a point in your early career where all of a sudden the game started to seem easy? I imagine when you first get in, it's really, really fast. And all of a sudden, maybe one day you wake up and it's not as fast anymore.
Absolutely. I think I joke with Jay. 5-year spell here. I never heard from anybody. The coach is nothing. And that's like I say that's a good thing.
That is a good thing.
Playing big minutes. I was with Desjardins, and they're just like, hey, we were ready to play. If we had a rough night, they knew that rough nights happen, but we always had better nights than most bad ones, and that's good. And then the other 5 for 6 years, were a nightmare.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, Bundy, let's talk about Sean Couturier real quick. We got a couple of minutes. Because, we saw him get off to a pretty good start. Maybe some of that was adrenaline. Then we saw maybe some things catching up to him, and his game wasn't quite at the same level. But over the last 4, the Devils game, the 2 Pittsburgh games, and the win against Arizona, he's got a point in all of them. I don't measure him necessarily just by points. But he looks like he's getting back to playing at the higher level that we saw in the beginning of the year and closer to the Sean Couturier we'd hoped would return. What have you seen out of Couts?
Outstanding. Positionally, you don't have to go 100 miles an hour. I think there's some nights that you see he maybe isn't the guy we saw 6-7 years ago with a little bit more speed, a little bit more pace. But he's never been known as a real pace guy, right? Like he played a little faster. His positioning is just so good that I always said I called Coots cold pizza because even when if it's not bad, it's still really good, And so he's just so consistent, Jason and Brian. The way he goes about his business.
Great reference.
Yeah, he does. I've called him that for years on many broadcasts, and he just plugs the middle of the ice so well that it's very, very difficult for the other team to get scoring chances and meaningful chances in between the hash marks.
That's phenomenal. Even when pizza's cold, it's still good. Even when pizza's cold, he's still good. He's still that.
Pretty darn good. Yeah.
It's better than no pizza.
It is. I mean, for sure. But that's just how valuable he is, like the way I see his presence out there. And the one thing I think when we evaluated this team beginning of the year, we didn't. I think a lot of us forgot about veteran leadership, veteran presence on a team, and how important that is. Yeah, what it means. And I'm going to beat dead horse, but sometimes taking out what wasn't as important before, removing that from the locker room and then letting this room grow together. Clearly, these guys like each other a lot, and that is meaningful on a team through a long season.
All right. Well, you got overtime here on the Flyers game day pregame show. Stay tuned, though. Tim Saunders and Todd Fedoruk, they've got the countdown to face-off, followed by all the first period action between the Flyers and the Colorado Avalanche. You've been listening to Flyers Game Day on the BetRivers.com Flyers Broadcast Network.